This
Oh, that's
conference
good.
will now be recorded.
Well, welcome everybody. We're once again back with our Flowerful Living community and our master gardeners. And yesterday we had a really interesting conversation about the importance of community. And that's one thing I think since COVID, everybody's really realized that it's actually more important than even, the miracles of food as medicine. So if you're familiar with blue zones are different areas within the world where there's just this really interesting longevity that's out there for people. And one of them is in Loma Linda, California, which is not that far from where I live, which I think is really fascinating. It's a more of a church related community. And one thing that's really important is community is really the number one thing beyond food, beyond anything they have, even on medical abilities. It's the fact that everybody is always looking out for one another. And there's always social connections, there's always social activities, and everyone, if you don't show up for a couple weeks, we're going to come looking for you, and we're going to go to lunch. So it's one of those things where there's always this really drive learning that that community is the number one health importance that they're finding beyond anything else. And yesterday we were talking about a really interesting research, and I wanted Maria to share that with us.
Well, there is being research lately about how community impacts on depression and addiction. When you have your community and you're an addict and you have people looking out for you, chances of recovery go to the roof because you have the people that care for you right there. And when you fall, what's going to happen? They are come to you for help. So there is this very interesting experiment. I think it was in the 80s about how addiction goes about. And they had rats, different rats, but each one was isolated, drinking. They had a choice of regular water and water with cocaine. And the ones that had the water with cocaine, and probably, I don't know exactly what they felt, but they will always go to the water with cocaine. It was a very stark setting. It was just a jungle, a cage, a wire cage, nothing else. Plus, just the containers of the food and the containers for water. And they were wondering why the rats always went and prefer the water with cocaine. The other water was untouched. Always that was their preference. And then started to look at the settings or variables if you're into science. And what they noticed is it was a very stark setting. They were by themselves and there was nothing to do. So they were eating, sleeping, and drinking. Eating, sleeping, and drinking. One of the scientists decided to basically make a bigger cage where there were hamster wheels, where there was nature. They introduced little plants, they introduced other rats, and all of them had the same choice. They had the water with cocaine and the regular water. And guess what? None of them touched the water with cocaine because, so to speak, their life was fulfilled with their community, their choices, what to do. And they immediately saw how they would help one and each other. And if you look at rats and mice, that's how they are. They don't sleep just one. They reproduced a lot, but they are always one on top of the other, like a mountain of rats and mice. just for comfort, for warmth, for company, for love, whatever you want to call it. But I found that experiment so interesting because what if addiction was not a disease, but just feeling lonely and segregated from your community? I leave it out there. It's just food for thought.
Mm.
So if you have an addict in your family, please, please give him a phone call, a text. Not judgmental, but hey, you want to do something today? What about a cup of coffee? Do you want to chat? What do you want to do? Can I stop by? Can I bring you a plant? Can I bring you flowers? Just very caring from your heart. Offer yourself that way because that person usually it's lacking security and love and community. So one of the things about Flowerful Living is that even we are online and the four of us are really apart. Each one of us, it's like very apart from each other, in the extremes of the country or the extremes of a state, but we have our community. We meet every Tuesday just to check up on each one of us, just to see how is the thermometer in your life. And sometimes we do energetic work. Sometimes we just bitch around what's going on in our life. Because, contrary to popular belief, sometimes bitching it's necessary to open up and to finally be aware what's behind it. But you can only do that with your trusted community. Because if you go to a group of friends and they immediately start pointing at you or criticizing you or giving you unsolicited advice, that's not your community. You just want to go and be bitchy about what's going on and just go home and say, oh my God, I unloaded this burden and now I feel light. And I won't need that glass of wine when I get home, or that cigarette, or that head, or whatever it's in your life, or that brownie, or that cookie, because you have community and you don't need to be addicted, but to love and your friends. So, what Kristen has to say about this?
I've got to turn myself on, of course. Um, and
Well, that's the key right there. You got to turn yourself on.
That's
Then
right.
your community, right?
Well, and I think that that is really the most important thing is so you can be in a community of beautiful, lovely lipstick rats and not be turned on. Do you know what I mean? And still be in this isolated, addictive cycle where your only pleasure comes from the cocaine water bottle. And we're all mammals, and mammals all come together and they pile on each other and they come together in times of need, um, because that really is a basic need of mammals, is to regulate, to comfort in, to come to community, to bitch, of course, but really the most important thing is to be received, to feel that contact, to feel in person their arms around you, but in our Zoom community to feel the hearts around you. And, it's been a real interesting experience in my life because I had a major loss a couple of years ago. And community was so hard to be a part of. I was turned off or shut down, um, or in shock or numbed out. Do you know what I mean? And it was such a lonely experience because I was in so much pain. There was so much grief in my heart. And it was really hard for me to pile on top of each other. Do you know what I mean? To receive, to even be a part of some things. And and it's been such a curious process because as I turned on to my own experience of love, my own, I call it soul love, or the great love, my own experience of, well, how could I open up and receive love? How could I open up and receive love even though I'm desperately in grief and so shut down? And so I played with it. And you always see me putting my hand on my heart. I played with it. We call this heart breathing, but I really played with this about, could I just feel the warmth of my hands on my heart? Could I feel, if I pressed in a little, just the pressure of my hands? If I moved my hands, could I feel that? And could I feel something that was warm and loving? Could I turn on just a little, just a little, just a little? And I'm saying I practiced this so much that pretty soon, you know, I'm starting to be turned on. Do you know what I mean? I'm starting to, like, okay, be able to come to this group of people who I've known Amy forever, and Maria for a really long time, and Robin for quite a while. I'm now able to come to this group of my friends and also my larger community, um, that have always been a part of the community. And I'm able to come and I'm able to relax into my heart and feel that love and connection, to get sort of in the huddle. Do you know what I mean? To feel the connection. And I really, really invite you, as you listen to this, as to say, well, how do I come to myself so that I can experience that connection, that love, and then how can I show up in community and really receive them? Do you know what I mean? Really, really receive the beautiful smile that everybody has for me in this group. Really receive the love, the little huddle, and really enjoy it. And so I just invite you to start, and it can be your own way. It can be putting your hands on your heart. It can be rubbing your face. It could be doing a facial. You could be holding your head. You could be holding, Maria just showed up a while back with one of her little kitties. It could be stroking your little kitties. I actually had a kitty come to me um, when I was in the throes of grief. And the kitty would lay on my chest and cuddle in, and I would just feel the pet. That's the petting and the closeness. And that's another way in, so that you can feel that love and connection. And then when you are in community, there is a connection. You're not the loner in the side of the room. And so I just encourage you to play with it, and then play with it. How can I be open in my community? One of my other groups I was in last a couple weeks ago, I just looked over at my girlfriend who's been through this with me. And I was sitting next to her on the couch in my house. And I just looked over at her, and I've been working on opening to this loving feeling. And I felt so much love for her. I felt like I could just be really close with her and connect with her, and so much love. And I'm just encouraging you to really get to know the great love and how you experience the great love, so that the next time you're in community, you can experience the great connection that you have in your own communities. And so I don't know who I'm passing on to. Are you up next, Amy?
I'll take it.
Okay.
uh Interesting, so many parts of this. One thing that I'm definitely going to look at is remodeling my cage, make sure I have plenty of activities. So thank you, Maria. I'm going to do that. And then, yeah, definitely, Kristen, the connecting to self. I mean, one of the things that we talked about yesterday is what's the difference between loneliness and solitude. And it's about maybe spending some time being with that question, even. What is that? Because you can be lonely in a group, you could be lonely in a friendship, and it's like, but if really looking at what is that solitude for me, that's connected to self, connected to something bigger, connected to who I really am authentically. So that's what that is for me. And playing with that, I lived in Loma Linda for many years, and it really is a community. We would have activities a lot of times surrounding healthy food. So it was really a mix of so many things, and acceptance of people of all cultures, which was really, really amazing. A really, really great place. And I'm all about community. I create community circles all the time. Uh, and that's a lot of what we do, all of us, in circles, whether they're formal circles or informal circles. I in asking this question today, one of my favorite books popped up, The 12 Stages of Healing. And that's, I go to a network chiropractor who this is based on. And I pulled it up, and stage 12, guess what it is? It's community. And it started with a beautiful quote. Again, I hadn't looked at this book in a long time. And I really love this quote about what is community. The modern quest for community is a quest for one's personhood. The essence of community is wholeness. That meets my needs and those of the greater whole of which I am a part. Community is a deeper reality within which I move and I have my being. It is one of the names of God. Community is a gift of myself, what I give in endless participation with my world. And that's by David Spangler. And that really is what community is to me. And so much of what we have created together. And at the end of each of these chapters, there are affirmations. And let's see if I can find it now. So I wanted to share those affirmations. Stage 12, community declarations. And kind of be with it. See where you're at. As I say these, kind of see where you're at with that. Now you know your action plan based on where you're at with this. I give my gifts and I receive others' gifts. I find the gifts I have denied myself and I give my gifts to others. I am one in the web of life, and my circle of love and learning expands perfectly. The Amy sigh. Yeah, let's all
That's
do an
right.
Amy sigh. Yeah,
Exactly. They know me as a
exactly.
girl who breathes. That's me.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's done.
Well, yeah, well done. And there's so much that all of us have shared when it just comes to a sense of community. A lot of different directions we could go with that too. But right now I'm in Morro Bay, California, and if you've never been there, put it on your bucket list. It's definitely a great place to go. It's right there off the ocean. And yesterday, my husband and I went over and we were watching the otters because they have this. This is like a safe harbor that's basically with its own little inlet where the ships and sailboats and stuff can come into, but it's not real big where a lot of big boats can come in. And all the otters were they had brand new pups, and the pups were maybe a couple months old. So there's all these pups floating around the water with their moms and having a good old time. And I just think there's just one thing about it's just this sense of community. They all were doing their own thing. And there was one group, there was about 8 of them where it was kind of like a play date. And like all the little pups were basically playing and the moms were just kind of keeping an eye on them and stuff like that. But it just shows that level of the importance of, being together and what that looked like. And nature just shows us so many ways. And I love how Maria was giving the invitation of like, and it also dawned on me too with that sense of community with addiction. It's like looking at 12 step. And what does 12-step do? It automatically brings everybody back into a community so they can be heard, they can be seen. So it's so important that, even if you're not the addict itself, it's so important to go into support groups, because it's one thing that I wanted going into a support with 12-step with Avalon, and it was so important for me that it gave me a new language, it gave me new relationships, it gave me a sense of borders and boundaries with people that I had never even considered. But it was also being in community in new ways that can help you to feel safe, to have a different kind of, like I said, vocabulary in the way that you might be interacting with people. So I'd love to kind of put that out for you guys, of like looking at it from that sense of, whether, you don't feel like, I'm not going to necessarily go to a bookstore and go to a book nook and have a book of the month or whatever that I go to. Not that that's not a great idea, but there's all kinds of ways that we can be looking for support, looking for ways of allowing ourselves to be in this different kinds of world with a different kind of language. And I think that helps us to move forward in the ways that we can be in community in new ways, which is just such a big invitation right now that I think we're looking at in the world.
And I want to just add something to this. I've also been in a community that burnt pretty significantly several years ago, right before COVID, and it really was that community coming together in really pretty heartfelt, helpful ways, um, that um, really helped us to survive after much of our landmass was burned. And I do think that with the difficulties that we're having now, in the United States, but the world over, with taking care of the needs of humanity, um, in the needs of the planet, it's really important for us to look out and see who in our community can we bitch to, like Maria's saying, but who in our community can we hold with as we create a way forward, as we maybe plant a garden together in real physical time, so that we have a food source, that we hold together, so that there's a feeling of community health, even if there isn't access to a greater health care system. How could we come together to create health for each other? Because we know that people that come together in these smaller ways, these real intimate community circles, they're so much more healthy and joyful and connected. um, it's just it's such an opportunity. One time I did a training with Amy, and we talked about crisis, and I think it was the Chinese or Japanese symbol, and I can't remember which. Crisis means difficulty and opportunity coming together, basically. And I think the opportunity for us is to look really local, and to really look at who our people are, who's going to support us, who we can pile up with and create with.
I love that. And part of what I wanted to share about Flowerful Living and Community, how I've always seen it, I think you guys do too, that it's like a community garden. Each of us have our own plot, and we're taking care of that plot because we have different things we want in there, different flowers, different vegetables, different herbs, but we're a big community garden. And if one plot is struggling, they all struggle. And just to your point about creating a community, I 2 years ago started a group at the Veteran and Community Center here, and it every month, and it's again today. And I need it as much as they need it. And out of that have birthed some really fun things. One of them is we call it a walk and talk, where we're going now a couple times a month. We go to different parks, and there's something about when you're not facing each other and walking that you can say stuff that you can't when you're looking at each other. So that works really well for us. And we actually do have a Stitch and Bitch monthly session where we're doing crochet, whatever. And that's not my thing. And luckily, the Stitch person is gone tomorrow for our monthly meeting. So I'm going to come in and bring coloring books and markers and colors. And so we'll be doing that, which brings in healing while we're releasing and bringing in love with coloring. Maria, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say the importance of community as Christine and I had worked with community in crisis. I worked in 2018 with the community of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School in Florida that had a shooting. But I'm so happy to report that through that program from the mind body medicine group that was inserted into the school, those kids are completely different. There were some that, you know, still have PTSD. It's been, 7 years, I think, that were there, but they are under care of the community and specialists. My husband was a teacher, a driving instructor of autistic kids, and not so autistic kids, but neurodivergent kids. A lot of them went from that school. He told me that he was impressed of the growth of those kids. They're very inward. They pay attention to their peers, what's going on. They have now mandatory meditative time in that school, and they have mandatory circle sharing in that school. So crisis usually brings a wave of compassion for an opportunity to grow. So we've seen that in the community in South Florida of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. So you see, community has to be there for good times and bad times, because your community will carry you to success.
All right, Robin, you gonna bring us home?
Yeah, you got to bring us
Gonna
home.
bring you
But
home.
before I got to say one more thing.
Go ahead,
Don't
Kristen.
wait. Don't wait for a crisis.
Right.
Please,
Please don't
Yes.
wait.
please.
Please come and join us in the wellness community. So at least you have online support. Um, but don't wait. Don't wait for a crisis, because I'm telling you that when the crisis happens, there's nothing more important than pre-established community relationships.
100%.
Yeah. And we would love for you to be joining us. We are over on Facebook at Flowerful Living Wellness Community. And we would love for you to go ahead and join. Let us know what you think about this conversation. Did something come up for you that was helpful? Did you have questions about it? Maybe a direction of something that we went to? Do you need to know about the otters? I mean, things we need
Tell us
to know.
about your groups. The ones you have and the one you're starting.
Right, exactly, with all these different gardens. And I mean, don't wait for somebody else to have a program out there. If something's, inspiring you and, follow your passion, follow your excitement, and find something that you can just say, you know what, I want to start a garden. And I bet there's someplace out there that somebody might be willing to volunteer a little bit of their land and they want to do it too. So there's a lot of community out there. So, if you're thinking it, odds are somebody else is too. Just like in school, when you had that question and they said, please raise your hand because somebody in the classroom is too embarrassed and they don't want to ask.
Yeah.
We've
And
got community
also,
out there where they're totally wanting to be there too. So, just like that with our community. So we thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week here at the community of Flowerful Living. Talk to you soon.